Good day, everybody. My name is Matt Bryant with Paladin Financial, and welcome to the Federal Employee Benefits Workshop. I appreciate you taking time out of your calendar to spend some time with me. We have a lot to cover here today, and so we're going to dive right in. When it comes to retirement, for a lot of folks, it's just a number. You know, you have your age in mind, and you have what that income number is to help give you a happy, a successful retirement where you don't have to worry about running out of money. Some people spend a lot of time thinking about it, and they are planning 15, 20, 25 years in advance for what that retirement period might look like, so they have a good idea of what their number is. Other folks are 2 years from retirement. They've been saving along the way because they know they're supposed to be doing that, but they really have no idea of what retirement will actually look like. They think they have enough to hit their number, but really have not spent the time digging in and trying to figure that out. We have clients, for example, who think they need to work another 3 or 4 or 5 years to build up their pension, build up their TSP, delaying Social Security so that they have enough money so that they don't outlive it. We've run numbers for folks like that and showed in reality you actually could retire much sooner than you are forecasting if you have the right plan. So that's very eye-opening. We have other folks who are on the cusp of retirement, think they have enough, insist on retiring early, and when we run the numbers, they run the risk of running out of money quite soon. So it's an important assignment, of course, to do well ahead of when you actually want to retire, because once you do leave your job and retire and you then have to re-enter the workforce later, it's not likely that you're going to be able to pick up the same type of job with the same type of pay. So we help with navigating the numbers. Now, another part of it is, how do you want retirement to look? A lot of people out there say, I'm going to be in the lakefront house and I'm going to sit on the dock, I'm going to fish and then hang out with the grandkids, and they know exactly what it looks like. Other folks are unsure. They don't know how they're going to fill the 40 or 50 hours a week. They've been so used to living on that sort of calendar that for 40 years, basically being told what to do and where to be at what time, that the thought of that much extra time in their pocket is concerning. So we're going to ask some thought-provoking questions throughout this presentation. So whether you're 3 years away or 20 years away, you can start brainstorming and formulating what you want retirement to look like. After all, 40 years of your life, in a lot of cases, have been spent working. Of course, there's value in that. You're contributing to society, and it adds well-being, but at the same time, you also want to be able to spend your golden years as you see fit and as you've always daydreamed. So again, my name is Matt Bryant. I have over 12 years of financial services experience. I'm originally from Kansas, where I went to the University of Kansas, studied political science, and then ultimately economics as well. My parents both were longtime government employees, so I've been around that type of environment for most of my life growing up, so it was always something of interest to me. I graduated into the Great Recession, so jobs were hard to come by. Managed to secure a job here in Minnesota, where I sit currently in the financial services industry, and have learned a lot about it and have ultimately come to love it. And adding the federal expertise as well has been a nice niche to get into. Previously to Paladin, I worked for a portfolio management firm where I worked with advisors across the country that worked with retirees and helped build and construct and recommend which portfolios to use to help lead to a successful retirement. I have the Series 6, 63, and 65, as well as being insurance licensed. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. Our firm, Paladin, so we are a leading champion of a cause, a determined advocate, a defender. We are here to work for you. So we want to be good stewards of our clients' money, help them navigate all things that they've accrued over time, whether it's money in retirement accounts or all the benefits that they are due. We want to make sure you're maximizing that, and if anything goes awry or if you run into issues, we are here to help be advocates for you. And we have clients across the spectrum. So a lot of our clients are coming up on retirement or in retirement, but we also work with a lot of clients that are in their 20s and 30s just starting out, and we can help navigate the things you need to do during that time period, as well as what you need to do as you are on the cusp of retirement and in retirement. We have a podcast, Paladin Financial Talk, and we cover all kinds of different things on a weekly basis. This current month is all about financial literacy at different age points, so take a listen there. You can also take a look because we do video record those. But the whole point is we want to help educate people as they go through their journey and ensure that it is as successful as possible. Our process is twofold. One, we talked about the numbers a little bit. Everybody gets a numeric plan. So we can show you how income is forecasted and how balances are forecasted to change over time and how we can use those to hit your retirement goal. But we also do a written plan. So we have a plan, a living, breathing document that we work on with you. So as life happens, as things change, that written plan is adjusted, and we're making sure we're checking things off the list at appropriate times. So if you did want to reach out to us and sit down for a consultation, our process is that the first meeting is spent doing numbers 1 and 2. So we want to see, learn about you, you learn about us, see if it's a relationship you want to pursue. We uncover concerns that you have, goals that you have, get to know you on a more personal level, and also get to know your numbers. So we ask you to bring several different things to help start getting an idea of your financial picture. Then we come back for a second appointment where we show you the strategy. So we take everything we learned in the first meeting, spend time building a solution to say, this is how we think we can help you. And it's everything from looking at how to maximize Social Security, how to maximize your pension, how to construct drawdown strategies, how to fund retirement using all the different sources of income available to you. If you do want our services, then we implement the plan. And number 5 here is just as important as numbers 1 and 2 is nurture. Nothing we do is set it and forget it. We want to make sure that the plan is a fit for you both now, but also is adaptable for 15, 20, 25 years down the road, because things change, life happens, markets happen, presidential elections happen, wars get started, and we want to make sure we're adjusting your plan as time goes on to give you the best chance of success. On the right here, you see different things we focus on. So goals and dream, what is it that you want to achieve? We also look at fears. Fears are a big one. What concerns do you have in retirement? Risk management is very broad, and there's all kinds of different risk out there. People are most familiar with stock market risk, but there's also the risk of running out of money or an interest rate risk, and we try to build a plan that mitigates those as best as possible. You're not really able to eliminate risk altogether, but you can help mitigate. Tax planning, so how does using your assets affect your tax bill at the end of the day? And we look at strategies that help diversify your tax picture. Income planning is a big one. You get 26 paychecks a year now. That's going to change where you are now getting a Social Security payment once a month, pension perhaps, and you're filling in the gap with your savings. So how does that look, and how can you do so efficiently? Legacy and enhanced planning, so protecting yourself and your loved ones and making sure that all your hard work that you've done for the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years passes to your heirs as efficiently as possible and in accordance with your wishes. Health and long-term care, so various strategies exist to help cover yourself for long-term care. There's outright insurance. A lot of people self-fund, so we look at your situation to see what's the best fit. And then investment management, so we use a portfolio management firm, select the strategies that fit your profile from a risk perspective and income perspective to help support all these different goals. So some big questions. Do I even need a financial advisor? With the internet, there's all kinds of information out there. Why do I need to actually consult with and pay an advisor? Some folks out there feel equipped and they can handle a lot on their own. Uh, but financial advising does bring a lot of benefits, a sounding board, security in what you're doing, and ultimately should have a better chance of success in retirement. Who is Paladin Financial? So that's a big thing we cover in our first appointment, but we are a registered investment advisory firm. We work with clients all across the country, helping with getting to retirement, what are the things you need to do along your journey, and then also once you are on the cusp of retirement, how do you turn everything into an income stream? How do you use your retirement assets to fund retirement in conjunction with pension and Social Security so that it is ultimately successful? Fees are a big one. We cover what the cost is during our first consultation, so there aren't any surprises if you did want to become a client of ours. And then why Paladin Financial? So we were very hands-on. This is kind of a scary proposition for a lot of people coming up on retirement, and how do I turn this thing that I've been saving for my entire life into a successful retirement? So that's a big why of working with Paladin Financial. These are some of the thought-provoking questions I hit on earlier. You don't want to get to retirement and then you're looking around on that first Monday, or maybe it's 6 months down the road into your retirement and you're bored. You know, you've worked so hard and spent so much time and gone through so much stress to save and have a successful career. You don't want to waste retirement being bored or have anxiety about it either. So for some people, it's starting a second career. There's a small business that you've always wanted to start, some new things you've always wanted to try. You've always meant to volunteer, and perhaps you donated throughout your career, but now it's time to actually give some of yourself back to your community. Traveling, of course, is a big one. Do you want to buy that travel trailer? Do you want to fly to Europe? What is it that you want to see during your golden years? Time with family, refocusing on hobbies. So the golf clubs maybe have collected a lot of dust over the years, or you've only gotten out occasionally on the weekends. Now's a chance to see what you really got and spend more time doing it. So we help in retirement with kind of brainstorming so you have an enjoyable retirement and you're not sitting around worrying about what's coming next. So I hit on the different licensures that I have. That's important because you need to know who is actually providing you advice when it comes to things financial. Who is behind the advice that you're receiving? There's really three main types. There's insurance agent, there's registered rep or broker, and then there's investment advisor representatives. So the first two are paid on a commission basis, whereas investment advisor representative are paid on a fee basis. The first two work on behalf of another company, whether it's the insurance carrier they're representing or the broker dealer they are representing, whereas the investment advisor representative is working on your behalf in a fiduciary capacity. They are obligated to put your best interests first. I have licenses to wear hats for all three of those buckets. We spend most of our time as the investment advisor representative acting in the fiduciary capacity. Whoever does provide you advice, you should do some research on who they are. Each one of these is regulated by a different entity. Insurance agents by the state, registered reps, and investment advisors. You can see the links there, but you can pull up a firm, you can pull up a person's name, see their history, their background, and also see if there's any red flags or disciplinary actions on their record, which should help you when determining if the person giving you advice is someone you actually want to listen to. All right, so let's begin with the meat of the presentation here. We're going to cover the annuity, we're going to cover Social Security, TSP, and then we'll spend some time on health benefits, Medicare, and life insurance at the end. So there are really two types of federal employees. There's a civil service retirement system, and then the federal employee retirement system, or FERS. The vast majority of workers out there right now are under the FERS system. So that's where I'm going to spend the bulk of our time. If you are a CSRS employee and you do have questions, we're equipped to handle those, of course. But since such a small percentage of the workforce is actually CSRS, we're going to focus more on the FERS employees. So there you see two very happy boys at the table for a birthday party. So that's my son and my nephew. My brother-in-law and sister work for Paladin as well. They started the company, and that is their son there on the left. But the reason I throw that in there is because when you were born matters in your calculation for your FERS annuity. So the MRA, which you'll see referenced throughout here, is the minimum retirement age. You can see on the graph what the minimum retirement age is for various years that you were born. Eligibility, that's where the MRA can come in. So if you hit your MRA, again, if you're say born in 1970, your MRA is 57, so you can retire with the unreduced pension at MRA with 30 years of credible service. Or you can be 60 with 20 years of credible service, or 62 with 5. So of course the fewer years you work, the lower your potential annuity will be, but these are how you get an unreduced annuity. There are what are called special provision employees out there, so law enforcement officers, firefighters, air traffic controller, border protection. They have a slightly different requirement, generally due to the type of work they do and the stress that goes along with it. So age 50 with 20 years, and any age with 25 years of service, with a mandatory retirement of 56 or 57, depending on which agency you're working in. There's also something called the early out. So if your agency had a reduction in force, discontinued service, maybe your job duties were transferred to a different group, you may be eligible to leave the workforce early. So the key is leaving the workforce without a reduction in your pension or your annuity. So age 50 with 20 years of service, any age with 25 years of service, which you'll recognize that from the special provision employees. The goal is, though, when these pop up, if they do pop up for you, is making sure you have a plan in place. Oftentimes it's a somewhat quick decision to have to make, and you don't want to be scrambling, pulling together files and figuring out where is all my money going, what are my expenses, and how will I actually fund retirement if I do take advantage of the early out. There's the MRA plus 10. So in this scenario, you've hit your minimum retirement age, you're under age 62, but you have at least 10 years but less than 30 years of credible service or work history. Your annuity is payable upon separation, but it's going to be reduced. So 5% for every year that you're under age 62. Perhaps you are age 60, you've had your years, the thought of continuing on and keeping on doing this is it's not something you want to do. You want to try something different. You can get your annuity, but it's going to be reduced by 5% for every year. So if you do it 2 years early, you're going to have a permanent 10% reduction to your annuity. So not that it's necessarily a bad thing. For some folks, it's I got to get out of here and try something new, knowing that there's going to be a cost for the rest of your life of doing so. But if the pluses or the gains outweigh the cost, then of course it's worth it. But point is, you need to have done homework on it to figure out if it is the right financial decision for you. So I've said credible service a few times now. What actually is credible service? So considerations here: military time would be included, part-time work is included. Now if you work part-time for 10 years, you don't get 10 years of credible service. You get 5 if you're working half-time. Workers' comp time, sick leave hours count towards your credible service, but it does not allow you to retire sooner. We'll cover that here in a second as well. The key form that I'm sure all of you are familiar with is the SF50. So anytime there's a personnel action, you're going to get one of these. It is always good to look these over make sure the information on there is accurate. What you don't want to do is get towards retirement time and realize there's been an error at some point along the way in the calculation of your credible service. Fixing something 20 years later doesn't happen quickly. It can cause some delays, and I'll cover that here in a bit. We have heard some horror stories of clients who had to delay retirement because of errors not being fixed. Then there's a certified summary of federal service. So for the FERS employees, this is your 3107. CSRS employees is 2801. Also one that you want to make sure you have on hand and is accurate. Again, fixing these after the fact is not good. Also, you don't want to be reviewing all this stuff on the cusp of retirement when you have had access to these and you can be reviewing as time goes on. Now, some agencies don't want to give you this form unless they know you are right there about to retire. So just work with your agency, see what they require. In some cases, you may need to say, look, I'm thinking about it, so I need to see my form to make sure it's accurate, and start factoring in what your retirement will look like. So when is a big one. I've met with a lot of federal employees that know to the day when they are going to retire, even if it's years out in the future. Other folks think they know when they're going to retire, and really they're just hanging on until they can't take it anymore, or maybe health concerns pop up. But it doesn't hurt to have a good idea of when you want to retire, and then speak with a financial advisor to help run different scenarios. We have a client right now who doesn't think she and her husband can retire until they're 70 years old. We've shown them analysis and said, look, you don't have to wait until age 70 if you don't want to. You can move that up, and you can still have enough to live a successful retirement and not worry about running out of money. So it just depends on each person's situation, but you should have an idea in your mind of when you want to retire, because that date then impacts so many other things, like your annuity, like when you take Social Security, how you use your TSP if need be to fund retirement. So having an idea of when is definitely something to be brainstorming about. So sick leave, as I mentioned earlier, it adds to your time served, but can't get you out early. So you might have an extra 6 months, but that doesn't get you 6 months closer to retirement, but it does add how much you get as a payout. So this is the eye chart test. Basically shows your unused sick leave and how it converts to days and months. You don't get partial credit, so if you're at 19 days, for example, like basically a zero, you need to have 30 to get the month of credit. So be mindful of that as you're accruing sick leave and you're getting close to the end. Do you have enough to get that extra month? It's not going to make a huge difference, but if it's close, it's worthwhile considering. But we're advocates for saying just use the sick leave for what it's intended. Don't stress about having to save it all to get a higher payout. If you're sick, if your kids are sick, just use it. That's what it's there for. So another variable in the pension calculation is your high three. So this is the 36 consecutive months of highest pay. For most people, it's going to be the last 3 years of your career, but that's not always the case. Imagine if you were in Washington, D.C., and it had a higher locality pay, and you had to move to Kansas to take care of a sick loved one for the last 5 years of your career. That is a lower locality pay, which would impact your high three. So your high three may not be the last 3 years of your career. Other people, perhaps you're in a position where you're supervising people and you absolutely despise it. Then you could switch to perhaps a different job within the federal government that doesn't have that sort of stress that goes along with it, but you may be taking a pay cut to do so. So your high three typically is the last 3 years, but not always. What is your basic pay? So it generally excludes overtime and bonuses. Some types of uncontrolled overtime are included. Locality pay, again, I use that in the example, and then hazardous duty and environmental pay are all included in basic pay. So all of you should be familiar with the three legs of retirement income. So the government came up with the concept of using your FERS annuity along with Social Security and then self-funding a portion through your TSP to get you to your retirement number. Those three aren't always equal legs, so your stool might be a little wobbly. Another reason to meet with a financial advisor to help smooth that out and make it as efficient as possible. When calculating the annuity, you're going to use 1% if you hit that criteria on the screen. So MRA with 30, 60 with 20, or age 62 with 5 years. This is what the same from the slide at the beginning. And then there's the early out provision as well. Now, you get a 10% bonus on your pension if you're 62 with at least 20 years of credible service. So if you're on the cusp of retirement, you're 60 years old, making it 62 if you've already got the years of credible service would lead to a permanent 10% bonus on your annuity. Permanent, lasts for the rest of your life. Plus it impacts surviving spouse if you take the survivor option on your annuity. So if you're on the cusp and you can get to age 62 and you have the credible service years, it's definitely something worth considering. So the calculation actually is very straightforward. You basically get 1% thereabouts for every year of service. In this case, we have someone who worked 30 years in the federal government. Their high three is 50,000. We take the 1% times the 50,000 times the 30 years, and we get a $15,000 per year pension. That does not include costs paying for the survivor annuity. Taxes, of course, are going to come off of that. Healthcare, all those different types of deductions still apply, but you can get an idea of what the gross pension is going to be. There's the 1% or the chart there, so you find your years of service, the months of service, and you find your factor. These are all things we help you navigate, so if you want to know what your pension might be in maybe a few different scenarios, retiring at 62 or waiting until 70, whatever it may be, we can run analysis to find out what that pension is, and then most importantly, how it ties back to your other income sources to see if that's a viable option. So here's the example where we have the age 62 with 20 years of service. You see here we have the bonus, so it's not 1%, it's 1.1. So in this case, we've got the 1.1, we have the $50,000 high three still, but we have 32 years of experience. So our pension is actually going to be $17,600, again, before any deductions. So worth bearing in mind. I know there's a lot of you out there that are lifelong federal employees, so hitting the 20 years is not an issue. Hitting 62 for most people is not an issue, but it's worth factoring in. If you're close, that extra 10% bonus could be very meaningful. There's also credible military service. So employees with military service after 1956, so starting January 1st, 1957, you can buy back your credible service for your military time. There's a calculation that goes into it, and if you have your DD 214, you can submit that and they can help you calculate what it would cost you to buy back that service. And the reason it's important is it would increase your annuity, just a matter of would it increase enough to make sense to buy it back that time. And the sooner you buy it back, the cheaper it's going to be, because there's, after the first 3 years you leave military service, there is they add interest onto it. So if it's something you're thinking about or want to do, it's best to do it sooner. You can fund it via paycheck deductions, or you can just write a check, but it's something you have to do before you retire. You can't be in retirement and say, wait, I want to go back and buy that back so I can increase my pension. So just be thinking about it if you do have military service. In this case, we have Louis, who served in the Air Force for 5 years. He is 25 years as a federal employee after that. His military deposit is $3,000 and his high three is $60,000. So if Louis buys back his military service, so he now has 30 years of credible service, he's got the 30 times the 60,000, the high three, so his pension is $18,000. It actually would be a little bit higher because assuming he hit age 62, he would get the 1.1, but for simplicity's sake, he bought back that time. He's got an extra 5 years. He now has 30 years of credible service, which increases his pension to $18,000. If he doesn't make that deposit, either because he didn't want to, or maybe he wasn't aware of it or didn't know what the amount was, he only has 25 years of credible service. So now we're looking at the factor being 25% instead of 30. So 25% of the $60,000 high three is $15,000. So the difference is $3,000 a year. The credible service, the buyback, was $3,000. So he could have paid $3,000 one time to increase his pension by $3,000 for the rest of his life, had he made the decision to buy it back. So like I hit this just briefly, but work through HR, have your DD 214. They'll determine what that number is to buy back your credible service. And again, pay by paycheck, deduction, or just write a check to the government. Everybody's favorite thing to do. But again, you have to do it before you retire. Now, there are special provision employees, again, the LEOs, firefighters, border patrol, air traffic controller. So their calculation for the annuity is slightly different. You get the higher amount for the first 20 years, so 1.7% instead of 1, and then after the 20 years you get the 1%. So you can see how that would impact your overall annuity. And again, these are gross numbers. We're not factoring in any deduction or taxes, things like that. So the special supplement, what is it? Who does it apply to? So we go back to our three-legged stool, and Social Security is one of those legs. The earliest you can take Social Security is 62, unless there's some sort of disability. But if you retire before 62, what do you do to fill the gap for that last leg? So who's eligible? So you can see here we have the MRA again with 30 years or 60 years old with 20 years. The calculation is based on what your Social Security will be at age 62. So if you have 30 years of experience, you divide that by 40. You always divide by 40. So if you had 20 divided by 40, you get half. But in this case, we get 0.75. Simply multiply that against your Social Security at age 62, and you'll know what your supplement is. Now, there's an earnings test for that supplement. So it's going to look at what you made the previous year, and if it's over the $22,000 and change, you're going to lose $1 for every $2 of benefits. So if you're making in the ballpark of $40,000 after you leave federal service through earned income, then you're basically wiping out what your supplement might be. Now, for some people, it's starting a business or it's something they're really passionate about. For others, maybe it's best to not have that earned income or that income and let your special supplement, your supplement fund retirement for a few years and then get back at it after age 62. So everybody should be familiar with cost of living adjustments. So especially in the last few years where we've seen inflation increase dramatically. At one point it was over 9% after COVID. And that causes, of course, the whole idea is things to be more expensive. So there is a cost of living adjustment with the FERS pension. Now, CSRS employees, it's tied to the CPI, Consumer Price Index. For the urban calculation, it matches that. FERS employees, it's more like Diet Cola, where you get 2%, up to 2% If inflation is under 2, you match it. If inflation is between 2 or 3, you still only get the 2%, and then anything over 3%, you get CPI minus 1%. So your cost of living technically isn't actually keeping up with the increases in cost of living. So it's important to know what that might be as time goes on. This is one of my favorites. How much do you need to retire? You could watch financial news shows, you could read financial news, and these are the articles you see. CNBC here, $1 million isn't enough anymore. CNN Money, do you need $1 million? Maybe. Seeking Alpha, no, you don't need $1 million. The problem with all these types of articles is they are not personal. They make generalizations, and it's not specific to your particular number. We work with a lot of folks that have $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, and they're able to live a happy retirement without running out of money. You just need to have the right plan in place to make sure you're not making mistakes that could derail your retirement future. But some people need $2 million, and they'll spend every last dollar. Others can get by with a couple $100,000 because you do have other benefits that are going to help contribute to your retirement, like your pension and your Social Security, and your spouse perhaps as well. So it just depends on your situation. So that's why we dig deep and get to know you and what your financials look like to see how much do you actually need to retire. And you come to us with your nest egg, is this enough to make it successful? So what is your number? How do you calculate it? This is a very simplified example. This is how much you make, how much you net every 2 weeks. You have 26 pay periods. In this case, we're looking at $39,000 net of taxes and deductions and everything like that. The goal is to cover this number with your 3-legged stool. Now that's a fairly low income number, but the premise holds. So we have the annuity, depending on your specific situation. We have $1,875 coming in there. We have the supplement, $1,125. We're going to use, we have a gap here, so we're going to use retirement savings, the TSP. Maybe a spouse has an IRA or what have you. Draw the rest out, so we get to our $4,333. Again, taxes are going to come out of that, life insurance, health insurance, so we net the same, $3,250. So here's the number. The key is the TSP. That's the big variable. How do we use our savings, whether it's IRA, Roth IRA, taxable money, to fund retirement? So again, all this is geared towards planning ahead and not being 65 years old and say I'm getting ready to retire at 65 in 6 months. You want to be planning ahead of this and be thinking about some of the things that may come up. So unused annual leave will be refunded within 30 days. So you'll just get a check for that. That does add to your income, but you do have a nice little potentially windfall upon retirement to help bridge the gap while your annuity is being adjudicated. The adjudication process typically only takes a couple of months. So what happens is you put in your papers, you retire, you're going to get a reduced pension at first, usually 60 to 80% of what your final pension will be, while the government is working through the numbers just to verify that you earn what you're going to get, what you did in fact earn. I alluded to this earlier about some horror stories where people didn't recognize errors on their papers until they were getting ready to submit, where then they had to wait. I said maybe as 6 months less of what you actually had for credible service. Well, you can either say, forget it, I'll take it now, or you wind up working while they're going through the process, because what if they say, nope, we're denying this, and you actually need another 6 months of service to hit your number. So you could wind up working during the adjudication process, or during the process while they're trying to fix that. They may come back and say, yeah, you're right. Well, now you've spent an extra 2, 3, 4 months working. when you didn't need to. So just check those papers as time goes on, make sure they're accurate. You don't want to fix a mistake from 15 years ago when you're on the cusp of retirement. The second thing, though, is if the adjudication process takes longer than expected, what are you going to use to fill the income need? So, maybe it's having the chunk from your annual leave, maybe it's savings in the bank, maybe it's tapping into your TSP or your IRA, whatever it may be. Have a plan for it. So plan for the worst. If that doesn't happen and everything goes smoothly and you get your full pension check within 2 months, great. Just don't let retirement get off on the wrong foot. Also, the reduced pension, they make it whole, so you do get extra to make up for what you missed. So this is a big one. People are generally living longer. It's not uncommon for a married couple to have at least one of the spouses live until age 90. So we have to fund retirement for a much longer period than 40, 50 years ago. So that's where planning with the survivor benefit comes into play. So this is the 3107 for FERS employees. Down there you can see your annuity selections. You can either opt to not have it reduced, so there's pros and cons to that. More money right off the bat, nothing for your spouse, and they could lose their health benefits. Or you could have it reduced by two different variables that we'll cover here in a second. So in this particular situation, we have a spouse who is a federal employee. They worked for the federal government for at least 10 years, died while still having the deductions taken out. The surviving spouse is eligible for benefits there, as are the children. Now, if the spouse remarries before age 55, unless married for more than 30 years to the deceased spouse, then that annuity would stop. But as far as planning goes, if you are in your 50s and you're still working and you have kids in the house, it is worth knowing what they would have should you pass away, and is that enough to get them through to be adults or to pay off the house or what have you, or is it in conjunction with your life insurance? Do you have enough life insurance? Those are the sorts of questions that we can help you navigate. So here are the options. The 50% option costs 10%, and I'll show you a calculation here in a second. So to have your surviving spouse keep a pension after you pass away is going to cost you 10% each year. Excuse me. The second one is 25% survivor annuity for the spouse. This one's cheaper, so it only costs you 5% of your annuity each year. The benefit to your surviving spouse, though, is a lot lower. Then there's some other situations where a survivor, if you passed away, would get a portion of your pension. Let's take a very simple example here. So this is someone who wants their spouse to receive half of the pension benefit. So let's say your calculation is that you, before any withholdings or deductions, you would get $24,000 a year. So 10% cost for the 50% pension. So right off the bat, we're losing $2,400 of our pension every year. So we're going to get $21,600 as a couple. We're getting $21,600. Should you pass away, your surviving spouse would get $12,000 each year, which is half of the $24,000 annuity. Now, that's before deductions. Cost of living adjustments will move that number higher over time, but you get an idea of what it costs both now but also in the future if you didn't have the survivor benefit. This one is the cheaper option, but your surviving spouse gets half as much than the other example. So again, same $24,000 annuity. This one does not cost $2,400, it only costs $1,200. If you pass, the calculation is just 25% of the $24,000, not 50%. So we get more now while you're alive. Should you pass, then the number is fairly significantly reduced. These are the things you need to be planning for before you actually start your pension. These are things that we can help you navigate and run different scenarios. No one really knows when they're going to die, and everybody hopes they live to a nice old age very healthily, but you need to plan for that not happening, because the amount of lost income for a lot of folks can be significant, because not only are you losing part or all of the pension, you're also going to lose one of the Social Security benefits. You don't get to keep both if someone passes. So for some people that could be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 of income that the surviving spouse no longer has. So how do you plan for that? How do you make sure that there's enough assets to continue funding retirement for the deceased spouse, or for the surviving spouse, sorry. All right, so the next leg is TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, similar to 401ks, for example, in the private sector. We're going to talk about investments in here, but this is not meant to be investment advice. Everybody's situation is different. I talked earlier about planning being a very personal thing, so I'm not here to give you advice without knowing you and engaging our services. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. One of the questions we asked during our discovery meeting is, if over the course of, let's say, a year, 20% of your portfolio went away, the stock market dropped and you lost 20% of your assets, what would you do? Would you switch immediately to something more conservative? Do you stay the course? Do you have the ability to add to it? What does that look like? That's something that's what advisors are here to do, to help navigate all of that. But it's important to make sure you have things constructed as you get into retirement properly, so you can weather those types of storms. So for 2024, you can contribute $23,000, either IRA or Roth, or a combination of both. You can't do $23,000 in the IRA, or the pre-tax portion, and $23,000 in the Roth portion. It's just total. And then if you're 50 or older, you get to put in an extra $7,500. So for those of you 50 and older, getting closer to retirement, maybe the kids are out of the house, expenses aren't what they used to be, that's an important consideration to help sort of push your retirement savings higher. So you make your contributions. Let's say you hit the 23,000 mark. If you are under age 50, your contributions stop. If you're over, it spills into that catch-up provision. The match you get through TSP is fairly generous. You get 5% of your 5% match on your contributions. If you don't contribute anything, they put in 1%. Then the next couple of percents are matched dollar for dollar, and then it's 50% after that. But the max contribution match is 5%, where that's your money. So the government's putting that in there for you. So if you're not taking advantage of the 5%, consider adjusting your contributions to do so. These are the 5 core funds. G fund is Treasury. It's going to be the most conservative option. If the stock market goes south, you're not going to lose money, but at the same time, the interest rate on it is quite low. F is a step up the risk spectrum, so it's still conservative. It's still fixed income or bonds, but you have some corporate bonds in here in addition to just the government securities. C fund, so common stock, so basically the S&P 500, which is the main United States stock index. S fund is going to be small cap stocks, so more volatile, the smaller companies that make up the economy. And then the I fund is international developed, so our overseas companies make up that portfolio. There's also something called life cycle funds. So the idea here is you have an idea of when you want to retire out in the future. You select this fund, and as you get closer to that time, this portfolio gets more conservative. So it's meant to be an easy set and forget it way to adjust the risk as you get closer to needing the money for income. There's a couple problems with this approach. I'll go back to how I mentioned I'm from Kansas, so that's about 550 miles. My ultimate destination is about 550 miles from where I live here in Minnesota. So when I travel there, generally speaking, I'm sticking with the speed limit of 70 miles an hour. I get near my destination, and then I start slowing down to 40, and then 30, and then 20, and then I reach my destination. Of course, speed limits change and you go through towns along the way, but keeping it simple, I'm going the speed limit for the first 545 miles, and then the last 5 miles, I slow down as I approach my destination. Life cycle funds don't do that, so you're not keeping your foot on the gas when you're in your prime earning years and savings years. You're slowing down as time goes on. It would be like me getting out of the Twin Cities, hitting the border with Iowa, and then instead of going 70, I'm going to drop it to 60. And then I get to Des Moines and I drop to 55. Then I get to Missouri, 50. At Kansas City, I'm going 45 miles an hour, and there's still 100 miles left of my journey. What you want to do is keep investing, keep saving. You want to do it so you're comfortable, but you want to be aggressive and let the market generate wealth for you. As you get closer to retirement, then you start throttling it back, because you don't want to see a big market correction when you're on the cusp of retirement, because then you could have wiped out years of potential income. But when you're 3, 4, 5 years away, then you start throttling it back, because when stock markets go down, worst case is generally that time frame to get back to an all-time high. So you never want to completely abandon the equities, because that's what's going to ensure you have money 15, 20, 25 years down the road. But you don't want to get too conservative too soon, because you're going to cost yourself some market growth. So what we help navigate is, all right, I'm coming up on retirement, I have 10 years left, I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive, but I'm only a few years away, so now I need to get back in line with my risk profile and have some of those safer buckets available to me, things that are conservative, that I can easily get my hands on without penalty, so that if the market did something bad right before I retired, I have a place to safely pull income from. So those are all things we consider when building plans for our clients. And again, it's so personal, everybody's situation is a little bit different, but it's important to keep in mind time horizon when doing this. You can see here the 2025 fund is even more conservative now. This is from 2020, but G fund and F fund are the two conservative options. That's over half of the portfolio. 2040, so we're further out, it is more aggressive. We still have close to 30% in a fixed income, and as years go by, that will get more and more conservative. So you can see here returns for the different funds over time. Not surprising, the G fund, the most conservative option, is pretty consistent, pretty tight band of where its returns are. The most aggressive are the S and the I fund. You can see the range of returns there. They're kind of all over the place. And 2022 down 26%, 2023 up 25%. So you can see some of the ranges of returns available or possible there. And if you ran this for all the different calendar years, it'd be all over the place, whereas the G fund is going to be more consistent. How you invest and what you do here depends on your own specific situation. You also have something called the mutual fund window inside the TSP. So if there's some mutual fund out there that you really love and you really want to invest in it, you can, for a cost, have access to that fund in your TSP. So you find the ticker or the symbol, make the request. It's going to cost $55 every single year, plus another $95 every single year, a couple of fees there, plus trade fees. So that's a steep price there, $29 almost for all the transactions if you moved in and out of it. So not necessarily a fit for everybody. So let's say you had the TSP and you want to make withdrawal, whether you're working or maybe you're in retirement and you kept the TSP there, you're happy with the few options they have. So without penalty, you can start accessing your funds at 59.5, in some cases 55. There's not a lot of flexibility when it comes to pulling money out of the TSP. You can call and request a one-time payment, and they're going to pull pro rata from the funds you have. You can turn it into an annuity. So this is separate from your FERS pension, your FERS annuity. This is turning your TSP into an annuity. The firm behind it is a company called MetLife. You see that number of what the annuity would be on your statement. Oftentimes there's better options in the private sector, whether it's annuities or building a portfolio in your IRA. but the annuity is an option. You could request monthly payments, say I need $2,000 every month. They'll send that to your bank account, again, distributing pro rata across the different funds. One of the drawbacks of this is if we get in a market where the stock market's down 20% like it was a couple of years ago, you don't want to be touching your growth funds to fund retirement. You get a year like last year was up 20%, you want to take some of your winnings off the table and fund retirement. Doing it pro rata doesn't give you that sort of specialized consideration when making the distributions. Now, RMDs here at the bottom, you have to take RMDs at a certain time. Depends on when you were born as to when you have to start those. For a lot of folks, that can be a big number. That's all taxable because the government wants you to pull the money out. They require you to do so they can get their hands on it and start taxing it. There are strategies in place, though, where ahead of that RMD age, you can start looking at ways to minimize its impact. Some people don't need that sort of planning. Other people, it could save them potentially quite a bit of money by having the right plan in place. So the life annuity, you tell them convert this to an annuity, you get a dollar amount every single month, no matter how long you live. So it's based off of the amount in there, and it never changes. So if you live to 115 years old, and in a normal portfolio, your assets would have been long ago depleted, you're still getting your monthly payment. The monthly payment, though, is the same. So things cost a certain amount here in 2024. They're going to cost a lot more in 2034, in 2044, and 2054. Your income payment will not be changing. So you need to be mindful of that. What your dollar today can purchase is going to be significantly less 15, 20, 30 years down the road. So the monthly payments, so there's the penalty if you're not old enough and you start taking money out of your TSP, and if it's pre-tax, you're going to have income taxes on top of it. So there is a stipulation, though. You can see here, if you retire or separate in the year in which you are turning 55 or older, you can access your TSP for income. Now, that's a nice feature if you need it, or if you're wanting to retire early and still have an income stream. But there's a couple factors to consider. One, you're kind of locking yourself into that number. You can update it every year, but you're locking yourself into that income. But also, you start drawing retirement assets when you're 55 and you live to be age 85 or 95. That bucket of money has to last that much longer. So if you're not careful, if you haven't done careful planning with it and forecasting out to what it might be worth, it increases your risk of running out of money much sooner when you started at 55 versus down the road. Same situation, except our special provision employees can start it at age 50 instead of 55. All right, on to the third leg. So this is Social Security. It's really the foundation of income planning. So the idea here is you worked for your whole life, and every paycheck, for the most part, had a little bit come out to go towards funding Social Security. When you get into Social Security age, you want to make sure you're maximizing it and getting your full benefit that's due to you. Some folks say I'm taking it at 62 no matter what. Others say let's delay it until age 70. We help with running calculations to figure out what that number may be, and I'll show you an example here in a bit. So the maximum Social Security benefit at full retirement age, that's FRA, full retirement age, is $3,627, but the average payout is only $1,827. Now, for some folks, they want to get it right at 62. They want to maximize the number of checks they get, even if they are smaller. Maybe you have a health condition and unfortunately you know you're not going to be living until age 70 or 75, so let's start that benefit sooner. Others, it's necessary. So, you know, maybe you're forced in retirement, or you're retired without having, you don't have quite the nest egg that you would like. You need to start pulling income from somewhere, and Social Security is one of your sources. So the difference between the best case scenario and worst case scenario is a lot of money. The report that we run for our clients shows, with husband and wife, or if you're single, shows all the different scenarios. The worst case, like if you made the wrong decision or you started it at the point that gives you the least amount, all the way up to the best case, and what that could mean for you long term. Now, that report is run in a vacuum, meaning you get that number, but it doesn't really incorporate your annuity. It doesn't incorporate the other assets you've accumulated to help fund retirement. So it's the first step to figuring out how to maximize it, but then we have to take it a step further and tailor it to your specific situation to see what makes the most sense. So here's the example I was going to cover. This is our Social Security speedometer, if you will. So we have the different ages across there. 62 is the first year that you can, or that's the age at which you can start drawing Social Security. It's going to be a reduced number. So we have our full retirement age, or FRA. It's different for everybody depending on when you were born. But if you start early, it's about 75% of your full retirement age benefit. So you have a permanent reduction for the rest of your life. 63, 80% of your full retirement age, 86, etc. In this case, full retirement age is 66, so you get 100% of your PIA, your primary insurance amount. And then it increases by 8% every year you wait. So if you wait all the way to age 70 in this example, you're getting 132% of your benefit. That's a lot of money compared to age 62. Important to consider. It doesn't mean everybody should wait till age 70. There's other factors to consider, but you can see the power of waiting and how much your benefit would increase. And if you've never done so, I encourage you to go to SSA website. If you haven't created an account, create one. Every year, check your statement. So when we meet with clients and they come in for an annual review, we encourage them to bring their most up-to-date Social Security statement. One, you want to double check that all the information is correct and that you're getting credit for all the things you should be getting credit for, that all your wages were calculated properly. But also changes as time goes on and you earn more money, for example, your benefit could increase. So we want to get the most up to date. You should always check it because that's going to be a huge part of your three-legged stool. Let's take an example here. Look at the Cleavers. So let's say their income goal is $75,000 before any taxes come out. They currently have $500,000 in an IRA and is earning about 5% in its various stocks and bonds. There's three different aspects that are going to impact their income gap. So the income gap is, I know what my guaranteed sources of income are, whether it's annuity or Social Security or a combination of both. And then I know what my number needs to be to have a successful retirement. The gap is the difference between those two. So in scenario A, Ward files at age 63, June's at age 62. And scenario B, which is the optimized strategy, after we run our report and crunch the numbers, Ward waits till age 70, June files at her full retirement age, which is 66. So there's a lot to consider when deciding when to turn on Social Security. If you turn it on later, you may need to use more from your IRA up front to fund retirement. But if you turn it on early and your benefits permanently reduced, over time you may need to pull more out of your IRA to fund retirement. So we want to keep that in mind. Also, IRA distributions can push you into an income bracket where more of your Social Security is taxed. That's also something we want to be mindful of. So we have a bar graph here, it's blue and black on the bottom. So the blue bar at the top, that's the income gap I talked about. So in scenario A, we're getting $41,193 from that Social Security scenario where Ward files at 63, June at 62. That means we have to get to $75,000, which is taking about $37,000 out of the IRA. Optimized strategy, the gap is only $15,000 because we've let Social Security build up, where Social Security is now contributing about $63,000. You see the income needed is $78,000 because we have a cost of living adjustment on this particular example. Now with the optimized strategy or scenario, more has to be taken out of the IRA at the beginning while this builds up, but once it's turned on, the need is significantly less. So the first danger is that we're using our IRA too quickly. So after 20 years in this illustration, we only have $16,000 left in our IRA under scenario A, where we filed early but the benefit was so much lower. Scenario B, we're down from our $500,000 starting point, but we still have $215,000. That's because once Social Security was turned on, our gap was so much smaller than had we started sooner. And this is a huge impact, and this impacts almost every single one of our clients. And some people just have to have that Social Security check as soon as possible. They've been paying in, they don't want the government hanging on to it, they want to get it as soon as possible. Other people, you don't necessarily have to take it right away. They work with us, we crunch the numbers, we can project out the difference between the two in your specific situation. Yeah, for some people, it does make sense to start it right away. Others have the assets in place, or their expenses are low enough where we don't need to tap into the Social Security yet. We can pull from our IRA, which also reduces the effect of RMDs down the road. So there's all kinds of different planning perspectives that go into this. It's just being mindful of your specific situation. The difference here, of course, is about $200,000 in potential IRA balances by making the wrong decision. You also have more taxes on that money that came out of the IRA. It hasn't been taxed yet, so when you pull it out, it's going to be ordinary rates. If you're pulling more out because Social Security is not contributing as much, that's a higher tax bill. Also, you can see here, it's going to more quickly deplete your IRA balance. So those are the different potential, I call them income sources of the three-legged stool. So the FERS annuity, which you should have an idea of what it is. You want to be doing homework as time goes on to make sure you're getting credited for what is owed to you. We can help run analysis to say, here's what it would be at various time periods. How does that tie into Social Security? How does that tie into your TSP? Because all these different things are working ideally in conjunction to give you a successful retirement, but you need to make the right decisions, because once they're turned on, for the most part, it's not something that you can fix down the road. So life insurance is an important one. It's important as you're going through life and you have a mortgage and you have kids in the house, and maybe you have just one income in the house, or even if you have two, replacing one if someone passed away is very important. It can also be important in retirement for a couple of reasons. So you don't have necessarily the kids to worry about, but your surviving spouse. If we have a client we've been working with where if she passes away, they'll lose her Social Security benefit, they'll lose half the pension. It's $40,000 a year that the surviving spouse or husband will not have. When you're talking about a $500,000 portfolio over potentially 30 years, that's a big impact. So do you plan for it with life insurance as one option? Whether you have it through work and you continue it into retirement, whether you have it in the private sector, it's just a matter of figuring out what that need might be. A lot of people don't need life insurance in retirement. Things are paid for. There's enough income if one of the spouses pass away that the other spouse can still be comfortable. So there's no need to get into it. It just depends on your specific situation. So the basic is take your income through your federal job, say it's $97,500, round up to the nearest thousand, which is $98,000, add 2, that's your basic benefit. Costs 15 cents per $1,000 per period while you're working, and then it jumps to 32.5%, 32.5 cents once you do retire. Now, that only applies if you see here you elect a 75% reduction at age 65. So when you do retire, your life insurance can drop off as time goes on. So there's a version where you're not paying premiums anymore. On this top one, 100% basic insurance from retirement until age 65. Then it's 32.5 cents per thousand from retirement until age 65. You don't pay premiums after 65, but your benefit drops. So it keeps dropping each month until you get to the point where it's just 25% of your original benefit. Then you also have the basic, but reduced by just 50 cents, or 50%, sorry. Same concept, where at age 65 it starts dropping, but it stops at 50% instead of 25. Not surprising, this costs more. You're paying for it. No reduction is going to be the most expensive, where you have 100% basic insurance. It continues, the same benefit continues as whether or not you're working or you're in retirement, but it's significantly more expensive. So you need to do the analysis to see if it's something that makes sense keeping, or are you in a financial situation where you did pass away and your spouse can continue on without having the need for it. So there's various options that go along with your life insurance. A, assuming you have the basic, $10,000, cost increase every 5 years, so there's bands. As you get older, the cost will jump up. No cost after age 65, and again, it reduces like our basic, and that one example where 2% a month until about 25% remains. Option B, you can get a multiplier basically on your life insurance. So salary again, round to the nearest thousand, then multiply it by 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Again, there's bands, so as time goes on, this will increase. The cost will increase, that is. It can be expensive. It's something that maybe you need the higher amounts when there's kids in the house, or there's some debt that would need to be paid off upon your passing, or would help to go towards debt. You don't have to keep it in retirement, so maybe retirement's when you do the analysis and see that it's not necessary to be paying that. Again, reduction or no reduction, depending on what you do, there's going to be a cost potentially. Be careful, just like with Social Security or a lot of things when it comes to finances. Once you make the decision, sometimes you can't go back and fix it, so you may not be able to re-enroll if you do opt out at a certain point. You can see the bands here that increase. So in this case, we have a $400,000 benefit. So maybe it's someone making about $100,000 multiplied by 4. When you're younger, it's going to be cheaper, makes sense, less likely to use it. You get to age 75, they're going to look at that and say, well, you're getting closer to actually using it. If you still have it, we're going to charge you quite a bit more. So now we're looking at almost $20,000 for life insurance per year when the benefit is $400,000. Not to mention you've been paying for that for a long time already. So it's something we can help you navigate. What is the need? Is the sticking with the federal the best? Are there private options, or do we just not need it at all? And then this is the family life insurance. So your spouse can get $5,000. Children can be covered for $2,500. So it reduces just like B does as well. Again, something that a lot of people drop off as they get into retirement. So now we have the health benefits and Medicare, a huge decision to make here, because healthcare costs go up as time goes on. They go up as we get older. To keep your FEHB, you need to have been in the system using FEHB for at least the 5 years immediately preceding retirement. Spouse can continue as long as there's a survivor option on the annuity. So if you do 100% FERS annuity or pension, and you pass, and that's where the spouse does not get any pension, then they also don't get the FEHB. So that's another factor to consider when deciding which survivor option to take, because the FEHB could be very valuable to them. You also have access to dental and vision, covers whether you're an active employee or retired. You need to have been eligible for the FEHB to participate. There's Medicare, so we have Part A. So Part A, the deductible this year is $1,632. For a lot of folks out there, Part A is free. Part B, there's a deductible of $240. There's premiums of $175 roughly per person, but there's also income bands. So if you have too much income, whether it's earned income or distributions from your IRA, going back to the Cleavers, now they're well under it, but the timing and the amounts of your IRA distributions can have an impact on this and push you into a premium that's much higher than the standard. And it's not prorated. If you're $1 over that threshold, you're going to be paying higher premium for every year that you're higher. So it's just something to be mindful of as you decide which Medicare you need. There's also a penalty for Part B. You don't have to take it, but it increases by 10% for every year that you don't take it. So if you get down the road and all of a sudden you want to reapply and start getting Part B, your premiums are going to be quite a bit higher because you've been penalized each year that you didn't have it. So what are my choices? I can do A and B and keep my FEHB. You can do a lower cost FEHB because you're getting the Medicare that's going to be a primary source of your health care. You don't have to do Part B. Again, though, there's a potential penalty, and you also want to take your specific situation into consideration. What medical needs do you have now, and what does FEHB cover? What does Medicare cover? They don't cover the same stuff all the time, so there may be a situation where you're covered here for these particular ailments or devices and not over here, or vice versa. There's also Medicare Part C, Medicare Advantage, that's an option as well. So why enroll? Again, this is what I was just saying. So Medicare covers some services FEHB doesn't. Vice versa is also true. FEHB can cover things that Medicare doesn't. So if you have both, and it's, you're considering what the premiums are for each, so you're not overinsured and just wasting money, this could work out quite nicely for you. Again, it's free for a lot of folks. You don't have to take Part B, but here it is. There's the catch 65, if you will. You have to sign up for Medicare within a certain time around your birthday, or if you're working, your 65th birthday, or if you're still working, let's say you're 67, 68, 69, still working and covered with health insurance through work, you don't have to sign up for it, but you have to do so within 8 months of leaving your job. The Part B does increase. There's a penalty for it if you decide to sign up after your grace period ends. So 10% for each 12 months that you could have had it but didn't. So if you think you might need it, sign up for it. You're paying a premium. Perhaps you don't need it, you're healthy, but you never know when you're 75, 80 years old what the benefit might be. All right, last section here, minimizing taxes in retirement. So approximately 95% of the FERS annuity taxable as ordinary income. Supplement is taxed as well. Up to 85% could be taxable as ordinary income. Your state may tax income or Social Security as well. Minnesota is one of the states that still does that. There's some states around us like Wisconsin that you don't have the Social Security tax. And then your distribution. So if you have pre-tax money in your TSP and you've rolled that to an IRA, or if you just take it out of the TSP as a distribution, those are all taxable events. And you need to be considering all these different sources and how it might impact your taxes. We talked about how too much income can lead to a higher premium for Medicare. It can also just push you to a higher tax bracket, and if you can do it more efficiently and keep more of your money rather than giving it to Uncle Sam, who doesn't want that? So helping to minimize your taxes, you can save more you can make more money by saving on your taxes than you do by making more money. What I mean by that is if you're strategic with where you pull income from, or using concepts like Roth conversions, you can have more money. Like Roth money, you're not paying income taxes once it's in the Roth. You pay money to get it in there. But if tax brackets or tax rates are set to increase, that might be a strategy worth exploring. So let's say you need $1 for retirement income, If you are at a 33% effective tax rate between federal and state, you need $1.50 to come out of your IRA to get you the dollar that makes it to your pocket. If you've strategized and maybe you have a nice Roth IRA sitting there instead of all pre-tax, $1 pulled out is $1 in your pocket. You've already paid taxes on that, maybe at lower rates down, previously. So that's a way to diversify your tax bucket and keep more money in your pocket. So we do look at the types of accounts you have and the different buckets from short, medium, and long-term needs, and also taxable money, which is where you're paying taxes as you go along. There's tax-deferred assets like the traditional or pre-tax IRA and TSP, where you got a tax deduction putting that money in. When you take it out, though, they're going to get you with the taxes then. And then there's tax-free upon withdrawal. So that's money that's in the Roth. You've already been taxed on it. When you go to pull it out, it's tax-free. So it's not that you want all of them, all your money in one of these buckets and the others are bad, but just like when it comes to investing, you want to diversify. You want to have flexibility and options when it comes to using your income buckets. So I know we covered a lot quite quickly. The idea was to give you some education as time goes on, but also to prod additional questions and get you thinking about what you want retirement to look like and some of the things that you hopefully have written down. In the chat bar here this whole time we've had evaluation form, so you can be filling that out and you can request a link or a meeting through that as well. There's also a Calendly link in there that you can request a meeting, and we do a complimentary consultation. So first session, going back to one of those original slides, discovery, getting to know you, your financial situation, getting to know you on a more personal level, and seeing if there's something we can do to potentially help you. We offer that strategy session complimentary, so it's a way for you to learn about us and see if it's something you wanted to do. Those are all complimentary, so take advantage of it. If you have an advisor already, we can give you a second opinion and see if things look good. Here's all the different reports we do. So the first one, retirement analysis summary report. So that's the written plan. So that's the living, breathing document that we update on a regular basis. That's our punch list of things to cover both now, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. And then the rest of these reports are the numbers reports. So we do a lot of calculations to figure out the best way to get you into and through retirement. And these all have a role to play in that. So if you do elect to meet with us, whether it's virtually or if you're in the Twin Cities face-to-face, we do both. We work with clients all across the country, so we're very familiar with doing Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So get to know what your goals and values are. We'll have conversations that will prompt questions that you hadn't thought of before. We'll look at what's going well for you and some things that you can tighten up. Again, the written summary of what we covered. And then if you wanted our services, we would outline the cost of doing everything and the next steps to actually implement the plan. So these are the big questions we discussed at the very beginning. I hope you've seen so far that we are well versed in the retirement space, but we also help out folks that are just getting started. And our goal is to give you peace of mind and to be an advocate and a good steward for you along the way, so that when you get into retirement, you can enjoy it and you don't have to worry about these sorts of things. Some of the list of things that we cover all the time is simplifying things, actually taking action when you need to, having the numbers in front of you to make an educated decision. If you need to do certain things like set up an estate plan or make more contributions, we are here to push you, to encourage you to do that, so that when the time comes down the road, things are in place and you're not scrambling. So our complimentary session, so if it's face-to-face, you can bring this with you. If it's virtual, we have a way to securely exchange documents. Bring questions, bring financials like statements. We'll do a risk analysis, social security income, leave an earnings statement. All those things are helpful for us to get an idea of your financial picture. After the meeting, if it's something you want to move forward with, we spend a week or so putting together all the financial reports and the written analysis, and then at the second meeting come back and deliver it to you and say, here's what you're doing well, but here are things we think you can improve upon. And if you want us to help implement those, we would do so at the third meeting. On your sheet there, you should be able to select various time periods. Just put a 1 or a 2, 1 and a 2, the best one that works best for you or the one that works second best. We can also give you a call and schedule as well. We also have the Calendly link in there so you can see what's available on the calendar as well. So take some time to go through that. This presentation is reaching folks not just in the Twin Cities but all around the upper Midwest here. So if you are in a different state, don't worry, we can still consult with you virtually. So don't hesitate to reach out because of that. But I hope you have at least enjoyed this somewhat, and ultimately I hope it's prompted some thought and some questions that you may have. Perhaps you have concerns as well. The best time to start thinking about something 20 years in the future is now, but if you are only a few years away, or maybe you're right on the cusp of retirement, it's not too late. Think about these things, spend some time doing some homework. The more work you put into it now, the more enjoyable retirement will be down the road. With that, I appreciate your time and hope to talk soon.